Welcome to the show, Valerie. Great to have you on today.
Thank you, Tim. Welcome. It's lovely to be here. It's new for me. I've not done this before, but having met you, I thought, this is a good idea. I'll give this one a go. Share some of my books that people can get on Amazon.
Yes, exactly. Well, that is the name of the game, and we are live. Oh, somebody watched for a second there on Amazon. I'll have to regale you from my phone because anybody, I go live on my phone and back here again. Right. Shall we start with the first book?
Right. Okay. And here it is.
The Key Person of Influence. Yeah.
By Daniel Priestley. Now, I know that you have told me other people have gone for the Key Person of Influence before.
Yeah.
The reason I've chosen it is because earlier this year, I was on one of his seminars, which he does global seminars. So people are dialing in from all over the world, a bit like today. So there were, I know, at least 250 people on it. And it was really about what it means to be a key person of influence. So, what I want to say is that how he positions the changes that we have been going through in terms of how we live and what we make a living from, the ownership of the land in medieval times by permission of the king because you were nobility, through to factories in the industrial age and now the digital age. So how he positions all of that and actually puts you in the driving seat is really interesting. And his 5-step program, which is very understandable, and the whole vibe of his sessions. You get the book for free when you go onto that. But having said that, I think a lot of these books are really good that you actually really read them and understand them before you even get anywhere near listening to them. So I really like the chapter on partnerships, because I'm a great one about partnerships, because I podcast with my lovely Julia. And also he's got this great thing about, so many people have got this step solution, but he's got the 7, 11 and 4 formula. And I don't know if you've heard of that one before, if anybody's mentioned that before.
No.
Well, it's all about key building meaningful and key connections. So you imagine you spend 7 hours on watching you, for example, on YouTube, podcasts, webinars, presentations, meeting you for coffee, whatever. And you have 11 interactions. So, that's really around building up that layering, which a lot of other people talk about, how many times you need a touch point for somebody to buy from you in business. And then they talk also about the 4 locations. So he was talking about a website, LinkedIn, Instagram, so that then they're saying a bond is inevitable. So that more people will be coming on to look at the books that we're talking about today on Amazon, for example, because we're sharing a bond together on the Book Chat Live. So I really think that, his whole creating content, making time, fostering interactions, sharing experience, establishing a deeper connection with your customers and clients, there is I highly recommend that content. And it speaks sense, which is fantastic. So that's why I chose it.
So who is the key person of influence then? Is it like you, or is it the person you're connecting to, or what?
It's you. You are wanting to be a key person of influence, so that people will come to you and recognize you and even say, well, I don't know if you can help me with this, Tim, but I'm looking for somebody to do X. Now, you might not be able to do X, but you might be able to signpost them to somebody else, Liz or Steve or Cheryl or whomever. And then at that point you go, oh, and they go, oh, thanks, Tim, because that's given me some work. And then they like you even more because you become their, influential for their world. And it's another way to just understand how relationships and connections are built together, really. And that's how I've chosen it. Because I really do. There are a lot of people around that do this, obviously. But he's been around a long time. But I really rate him, and I've listened to his podcasts. He's got something special, and he makes it easy to digest and understand and utilize. Because it's no good wanting to. We could all run around going, "I'm visualizing, I'm on a
Yeah.
beach, and I'm sipping a cocktail, and I've just earned $1 million out of it." It doesn't really work like that, does it? So you've got to put the hard yards in, and that's what he does in the book, and he makes it really easy to understand. So I highly recommend it. Daniel Priestley, Key Person of Influence.
Shall we go on to the next book?
We can indeedy.
Which is Audacious Goals, Remarkable Results by Brad Balkan and David Herzl.
And here it is. Here it is, ladies and gentlemen. Yeah, Audacious Goals. Now, this is not just a history book, okay? And this is about three men, an explorer, Roald Amundsen, Isambard Kingdom Brunel, the British engineer, and Theodore Roosevelt, the American statesman. And they're about how these people shaped our modern world. So the book reveals outsized risks and setbacks that they endured in their ventures, and which actually left a great legacies. Now, I don't know if you've heard anything. I mean, we know about Brunel because of the railway. Got a lot more than that. We also know that their stories are, and their journeys are fascinating and inspiring, because they had to make decisions. They had to make, in some case, quite difficult decisions. And we didn't have the connectedness, that we have now. I mean, I met Brad, which is one of the reasons I've got the book, hey? But he basically talks about things that were life and death situations. We know that. And it's kind of proving that unstoppable people who've proved that bold goals, which is the audacious side of it, can lead to the earth-changing results. So, like if you look at every challenge, it does have a logistical, a political, an engineering, it has explorer, it has all the views of those people together in order to come to a good decision and a good outcome from that decision. So it's looking at the solutions and challenges. It's not quite a SWOT analysis, but it's close, and the opportunities that need to be reviewed from various angles and different disciplines and different approaches to actually get a good outcome. There's a milestone option, which is when the Norwegian explorer Amundsen is actually in Antarctica. He's running out of everything. Okay, so he's not going to make it. And it can't, so there's a point where you've got to say, well, I'm going to go back and save my life and save what I can from the men that are with me, or I'm going to continue and die there. And he obviously makes the choice to go fight another day, hey?
Yeah.
So he puts his flag in the ice, could be in the sand, but you're putting your flag down saying, this is a milestone. I've got this far.
Yeah.
And so for somebody coming past, they can see that your flag was there. You did make it, but it's not, you didn't actually do what you set out to do. In your mind, you were not successful. But if you reframe it and say to yourself that actually the milestone was just as important, then that's where the book comes into its own, with understanding what success means to you and how you can say, I reached that milestone, that was successful. And also the views of having the different, because sometimes you need more than one type of person or a partner in order to get something live and going, whether it's a new business, whether it's an event, whatever it might be, you need those different skills and disciplines in order to make it work. And he showcases those really well in the book with him, Brad and David Herzl. It talks about being audacious goals and remarkable results, and it really, really was. I mean, extraordinary people with, and also when they did it all those years ago, but all of them were it's not, I can just nip out for a McDonald's, wasn't like that then,
taking another random tangent, but it's like I was talking to somebody who have actually been on this show and it was on my other show about how they travelled the world in like 2005 or something like that.
Yeah.
And even though that's not that long ago, this is before Google Maps, this is
Yeah.
before like Uber, this is before like Grab, before all of the Google Translate,
Yes.
like things in the past have always been a lot harder than they are now, and people tend to forget about that when they're going through things.
Absolutely. The road to achievement, even the smallest things which we might consider. I mean, look how many hours it used to take to get from one location to another.
Yeah.
You know, now we just accept it. You know, now getting on the plane is like just getting on a bus or a train. You know, you visited all the states in the US. I mean, that's exactly what it's like. So you forget sometimes how absolutely, you know, life-threatening it was, and also trying to get just to communicate an information took months and months of trying of organising and planning, and not everybody really had any idea what you were doing.
Yeah.
You're working in, you know, you're working in a silo, fixing a boat or doing something. You know, I mean, it's just, it doesn't make it really. Now with our connected world, it make you just think, how did they manage to do that? But I think it was having the ambition and the inspiration, and then actually using good planning skills and discipline to actually work out how best to achieve it. And I really like the idea of planting the flag, because look at the things that we're all trying every day to try and get off the ground in some shape or form. And sometimes you need somebody to just say, you're doing good. You're doing good. Pat on the back, you know, because we don't really see enough of that.
Yeah.
And we're too busy challenging ourselves, aren't we?
Yeah. Well, yeah. Well, also, it's the whole don't compare your backstage to somebody else's front stage. I can't remember who said that, but that's true. We really do compare ourselves to other people's outward facade, and it's not a good thing.
And we shouldn't, because that's, you know, that's one of the challenges with some of the socials, isn't it? Not all of them, but some of the socials definitely. And we shouldn't. We should be ourselves. And I mean, it's hard at times now. You know, we're far more connected, and we see more, and we see things much faster. So we don't get the processing power that maybe we, you know, used to have a phone call, sit and think about it. Now we're on to the next one, and you've had a return phone call, and you've got something else, and that comes through on email, and then they've slacked you, and you know, WhatsApp, other platforms are available, you know, whatever, you know, and then you go, whoa, what happened there then?
Yeah, exactly. Anyway, should we go to the next book?
Yes. Well, the next book is, now this is a novel, The Goldfinch by Donna Tartt. I've given it away. I've bought it so many times, and I've given it away. And I probably read this about 10 years ago, if I'm honest with you. And it was a wonderful book. It's won, you know, a batch of awards, you know, in terms of, it was her second novel, actually third novel. So she's won the Orange Prize for fiction. She's won the Pulitzer Prize for fiction, the Andrew Carnegie Award for excellence in fiction. She's won a ton of awards, okay? And this book, they did make it into a film, actually, which was slightly disappointing. And one of the reasons it was disappointing, it's not a small book, okay? So there's a lot of character definition and elaboration there, which is obviously missing from the movie.
Yeah.
But it's about a boy's story, you know, a boy's journey. He's 13 years old, and he survives a terrorist attack in the Met Museum in New York, Met Museum of Art in New York. So he's with his mum, and unfortunately his mother died in the attack. So it's a major trauma. That's the first chapter, really, the trauma.
Oh, okay.
But he survives it, and he ends up with a painting. And the little painting is called The Goldfinch. So it actually does exist, the goldfinch, as a painting. So he's been abandoned by his father already. Yeah. So this little boy is called Theo. And he's taken in by a family of a wealthy friend, pro tem, whilst they try and work out, because obviously he's in New York with nobody.
Yeah.
So he's very bewildered with what's going on in his life, and so this is all strange new home on Park Avenue. So you've got the luxury, you've got, you've got some kids at school don't want to talk to him because what's happened to him, and so it's got many twists and turns, and so it's got a huge where is this kid then young man going? So it's an old fashioned story of loss and obsession and survival and self-reinvention, and it has many twists and turns, and some of the write-ups do actually compare it to a Dickens novel, although it's based in the US. So they do talk about that quite a lot, and so it really is dramatic changes in his life. He travels around a lot. His father does come back onto the scene for a bit with a new mother and stepmother, and so he's just really, he's kind of, it's a real fast read. There's a lot of it, but it's page turning, because you're thinking, what is this boy going to do? And it's just quite immersive book, actually. And the art world is in it, because obviously that's how it began. And so you see what happens with the painting. Oh, Donna Tartt's written some great books, and this, and as I said, to have won so many awards, she's just, I think she was also at one point the most influential people, the top 1,000 influential people by our beloved Evening Standard here in London. But she's being American, obviously, she's got an awful lot. She's finalist of Critics Award in the US and all sorts of really women's fiction. It's just huge. But this one is just really clever. It's really clever how it's put together. Real mystery.
Yeah, I've heard of this book, but the funny thing is that your description of the story doesn't really come from the title. It's like sometimes you have a book where it's like Zach Brannigan's space adventure kind of thing, where it's obvious what the book is about. But with the goldfinch, the goldfinch, it's not clear at all, is it?
No.
It's like it could be about it could be a book about a goldfinch or something. But
a painting of a goldfinch. So but her books are quite deep, actually.
Yeah.
There's a lot going on in this. A lot going on. I mean, there's some, lavish lifestyle and drugs and God knows what else happening. But, and that the thing is that he's got to survive and make his own way.
Yeah. Okay. Shall we go on to the next book, which is Rules of Stability by,
Amor Towles.
Yeah.
Now, you probably know him as Gentleman of Moscow. So this one is another beautifully written novel, and is set in Manhattan in the 1930s.
Yeah.
So it's all stylish, glitzy, sharp. It's truly immersive, like The Goldfinch. And when you had to pick out books that really, you could go back and read again. But he's well known, for his Gentleman of Moscow. That was, I think, his most famous book.
Yeah.
I can't remember where this actually sits in the scheme of them, but this is about the golden age, Greenwich Village jazz clubs and Wall Street coffee shops and champagne palaces and speakeasies. And again, it's a journey. It's a life journey for this, our main character, Katie. And she's with nothing really, but she's starting out with nothing. She meets a chance encounter on New Year's Eve that changes her life forever. So it's the opportunity to mix and move with the famous, the wealthy folks. She sees another side in a very tricky time, because again, running alongside this, you've got the Depression era in the US and how to survive. She encounters, and sees lots of emotions of envy and desire and disloyalty and sadness, but it's incredibly upbeat, even though it's got these difficult topics, because she has to, if you like, it's a watershed story and a watershed year in her life. And there she's at 25, She's in big city. She's armed, it says, with little more than a formidable intellect and a wit.
Yeah.
And there she goes and meets this guy in a jazz club, and the rest is history, really. But it's very interesting how she's from, a secretarial pool in the day to what she then, gets. The doors are open to her, and the tables that you sit down at where, she's working, with Condé Nast. And again, because of the time, the 1930s, it's such a difficult, people don't, it's 100 years nearly, and people don't know that people was really, really struggling. And yet here we are at the top of the tree here. It's all fizzing and it's lovely, and everybody's out and everybody's beautifully dressed, and everybody's having a really, really, some people, you might think it was like Scott Fitzgerald or something like that. It's got some elements of that, but Mortales is an American writer, brilliant writer. So highly recommend Rules of Civility.
So your rule for novels is they have to be set in New York. Then is that
No.
is that the
Well,
thing?
I do like the US. No, providing it's a good novel, I
Yeah.
can, but another page turner.
Yeah.
I've bought this for people when. My niece had an operation and I sent her chocolates, a card, and this book, for example. So I tend to. There's some go-to books that I tend to buy for people, just sort of, it's immersive. You can go and look at, it's cinematic black and white film with glitz and glamour, sitting by a swimming pool on the top of a skyscraper in New York. So it's very, it really very interesting, and how, youthful America was depicted at such a tricky time for so many in the US. There's always lots of underlying currents in his books anyway, but and also to be fair, in Donna Tartt's, there's lots of layers you can read it as. And I just had to have this. I just had to include this for us.
Okay, shall we go on to the next book, which is not fiction?
No, it's not fiction. Andy Lapata, Connected Leadership. Andy Lapata. Right, so I know Andy Lapata. I met him many, many years ago at a networking event. And this book is all about making connections. So it's a business book. One could call it networking, but that's got such a, sometimes a bit of a dodgy underpinning reputation. So this is about professional relationships and how to build professional relationships for success. So I met him funnily enough, at a lunch for a lady who runs a professional networking group here in London, and he was the lunch speaker.
Wow.
And I'm talking, this is probably about maybe 15 years ago. Okay. So he's a man with a lot of books, okay? But Connected Leadership, really, he is a specialist in professional relationships and networking. And he also writes about mentorship now and all sorts of things. So this book gives us insights really into how best to do it, how best to build a network, how best to develop strong relationships, using social media as a research tool, having a social media strategy, all of which, this was, a few years back now. This is not, like yesterday. Going to events and conferences and reaching out to competitors, even reaching out to competitors, something in the business world that's considered a bit, but actually in L&D, which I'm in, it's actually good to share resources and help each other because, what goes around comes around. And I particularly like his A Map of Influence, and he's also got 8 Rules of Dialogue, which again was born from a difficult time. So I'm just going to see if I can find my 8 rules. How to look at what's around you and how to, if you like, understand how to be social and how to leverage professional relationships, how to ask for a good referral, how to really look at the importance of influence. It talks about building influence again, so there's so many good things in here. It's just jam-packed with nuggets. The role of trust. How many times do we hear trust now? You and I are out there in our trust relationship. we've got an influence map there, where we talk about the CEOs and the actual shareholders and people that you know. So you're looking for people to introduce you to other people potentially, or at least say who influences key decision makers, what influences them. So the influence map is a lovely one. And, but to be taken seriously, there's so many things that one has to really work at to make sure that, business leaders, look at not just an organization as a whole, but ask what encourages and sometimes stops people from passing referrals or leads to colleagues, So it's the golden rules of networking, building relationships, being, what I would call, sometimes people go, we don't want to be a bit stalky or something, but sometimes you can just say, I saw this in the magazine, or I saw this book, or I saw that, and I thought this would be really nice. So there's practical steps of how to build that in a very interesting and very professional way. So Andy Lopata still doing fantastic work and very experienced international speaker. 5 books, probably 6 or 7 now, connected. So have you seen him at all speak?
No, I haven't. And I mean, I go to way too many conferences. So, yeah, for some reason I haven't. So, he may not have spoken much in the UK.
He's done quite a bit in the UK. I mean, he's also part of the Learning and Performance Institute, my institute as well.
Oh, okay. So it's
work with them. But so he is very, very L&D and coaching and mentoring, and his professional relationships wheel, it splits networking into building and nurturing and leveraging.
What is L&D to the? Is that leadership and development?
learning and development.
Learning and development. Yeah.
Sorry, learning and development. Sorry.
Nah.
Yeah, acronyms. We've got too many of them, hey?
Yeah. Well, initialisms are all acronyms. Somebody corrected me on this English point, but an acronym is where you pronounce it. So, like NATO is an acronym.
Yes.
If it's something like CIA, that's an initialism.
Oh, right.
Yes. So that's your English factoid today. It's like,
thank you.
Yes.
Okay.
And you can be massively pedantic about people saying that's not an acronym.
I was going to say it's a case of remembering it and can you find it?
Yes,
isn't
it?
Yeah.
So,
it's like there's 6 ways to do, save a file in Word, for example.
Yeah.
Other software is available.
Yeah.
And it's saying, but what can I remember?
Yeah. Anyway, on that bombshell, should we go on to the next book? Ooh.
And the next one, I think, is Tom Cheesewright. Again, I've given this away.
High frequency change. Yeah.
High frequency change. Yeah, high frequency change. Tom Cheesewright is a futurist. Mm. And when I first heard that term 7, 8 years ago, I had no idea what that meant, actually, frankly. So again, I met Tom. I watched him on a conference call like this, at a virtual event, and I was absolutely blown away by his knowledge, his experience, and his view of the world.
Yeah.
So I was fortunate. He's also been a podcast guest as well. But the high frequency change is something about that we all have to contend with now, which is how fast everything moves, how fast everything changes. Do we get overwhelmed and information overload? Yes, we do. We absolutely do. And so, the stats, according to a poll by YouGov of over 2,000 adults, said 69% of people feel that change is happening faster than 20 years ago.
Yeah.
And I would agree with that, wouldn't you?
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, it's just the whole multiplication of I've been trying to vaguely keep up with AI, but it's like every new week there's a new thing that comes out. And it's like,
I know, shiny new thing everybody wants to know about. And that's really interesting, particularly in learning and development, because there's always this kind of, it's a shiny new thing. So I mean, I've met other futurists now, because once I've found the job title, I started looking to see other people. but there aren't many around. It is it, obviously that role is becoming important. And why is it important? Well, he works actually in the business world quite a lot. So for example, and in fact, there was an outage on Microsoft outage. Do you remember last year?
Yeah.
He was actually on the BBC talking about what'd gone on and things like that. So we'd like to say that high frequency change, it doesn't, and we know it doesn't affect some things. So if you think about maybe furniture or, beds, baths, buildings. So some things high frequency change doesn't affect a lot, clothes maybe. But the same can't be said for TVs, PCs, music. So there's a huge, there are some things that absolutely keep changing very fast. And we've got this big news cycle and media bubble that goes on a lot. So that's also wrapped up in the book and explained to us. But there are things that some companies want to know what will be the latest trend so that they can get a head start on it, develop that. And so when Tim wants it and Valerie wants it, it's there for us to buy.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that means that we're moving in a less frictionless, world. So it's easy to buy products, it's easy to buy tickets, it's easy to pay for things on the card or on the phone or online. So what Tom does is he discusses what some industries are affected by more than others and why change can be expensive, because if you don't do your research, then you're looking to say, aha, so I'm going to invest in this whole new area of a new division's going to be built up. I'm going to staff it up. And then because I believe this is going to be the way forward, or the futurist or whomever has said that this is going to be the next new thing that's going to be in my sphere of business and I need to do it. So you want to be ahead of that change curve and make the benefit from it. But what if you can't cash in and you don't get it right? And what he is doing in the book is explaining how those decisions are made and how the analysis and the research, and because he's been looking at it a long time, it's jam-packed with insights. So high frequency change, he's obviously got other books, funny that, hey? But it's why we feel that change happens faster now and what to do about it. And because he's got that, and he's, it's like a lot of things now, that the topics are so vast and in-depth that you need to be doing it 24/7. And if you're not, you aren't just dip in and out. In fact, you mentioned AI you can't just go, oh, I'll have a look at this today because tomorrow or next week it will have changed or be renamed. That's another thing in my world, renaming things. It's the same. Yeah, but we're calling it that now. Well, why couldn't we call it what we called it before?
Yeah.
Because it's changed.
Well, often it's because I used to work in IT for a long time, and a lot of things had a 20-year cycle, and they came back again as something with the same thing more or less, but with a different name, and it's because then they can do sales and all the rest of it on the new
repackage
thing.
it. Yeah, it is. It's repackaging it.
I don't blame them for doing that necessarily. So.
I think it's interesting. Well, as a trainer, which I am an IT trainer predominantly, people have core systems that have got so many things that you can do. Database has a record. When you're in a customer relationship management, you've got a record. Those records have similar information on them, and they have similar links to other records because it's an enterprise system. So it might be called something else. And it might look different, but it does the same job as what your one did before, 20 years ago.
Yeah, exactly. Anyway.
Anyway.
Shall we move on to the next book?
It's got to be this one, hasn't it? No, it's not.
Diary of the CEO.
So when have you got your Secret Lives of Numbers?
That's at the end, I think.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, well, I think I gave it. I think this was the order you gave it. I may have transcribed it or got it mixed
Doesn't
up somewhere
matter.
along the way. So,
not a problem.
The Diary of the CEO.
Yeah, Stephen Bartlett, The 33 Laws of Business and Life. Well, I was actually going through an airport
Oh,
and I bought this. And I came out of the bookshop. There was a guy sitting opposite because we were all waiting for the planes, obviously.
yeah.
And he was reading it. And I said, I've just bought that. What do you think? He said, it's fantastic. He was ripping through it. So it's another knowledge book, really. Oh, no, it's not. No, it's not. It's another business book. It's nearly ending on a high note.
Yeah.
So I listen to his podcasts and I love his work. And this was published in 2023. So he goes through the book, although it's called a diary, he's actually looking at the 33 laws. Have you read this?
No.
Okay. So 33 laws of business and life. So it's based on not just his entrepreneurial journey, but of those of many guests and associates and also various businesses that he's set up with other people. And so it's not so much about maybe strategies, but it's about fundamentals. And so I have to pick a few favourites out because Law 6, got to go and open it up now. And I love the way he's got it laid out because I really, there's lots of little pictures in it.
Yeah.
And, Law 6, ask, don't tell.
Yeah.
Law 6. You see that?
Yeah.
And he's got lots of little pictures throughout. And so, Law 6 is ask questions, basically. The power of the question and the behavior effect, using your cognitive dissonance in your favor. So ask questions. And that's so important, ask questions of your actions because your actions will have the answer. Your actions will have the answer. I really like this. And at every law, he's got something that really explains things. So kind of the law is, don't ask, don't tell. Because if you want to create positive behavior, don't make statements, ask, which have binary yes or no. You want them to say yes. If it will bring you closer to who they want to be, and once they answer yes, that yes is more likely to continue to come true. So it's really interesting about how he formulates. He's got some great stories in there. Obviously, he's got one there on Ronald Reagan, but.
Yeah.
So, Law 7 is never compromise your journey, your own journey, yourself on the journey. So it's a really, really interesting book. And I'm looking now for image on page 63. Again, it's a bit of a Bible, this one, because I go, oh, that's in there, isn't it? You must you must make pressure your privilege. I'm not sure sometimes like that. You must become a plan and a thinker. You must outfail the competition. Now that outfailing, fail fast, fail quick, and then move on. That's another great one in here. And that's he talks about how you can increase your failure rate, which we all think, about that. But he's got some great stories in there, booking.com, and really interesting how he turns things around. And, but your skills are worthless, but your context is valuable.
Yeah.
So there's lots of things that we now, actually, 2 years on, that we now revisit and I want to not quite regurgitate, but that certain people are still basing things on that.
Yeah.
And I think he's a very interesting man, and the pod's also a bizzo.
Well, I hate the word pod. I hate people saying pod for podcast. I don't know why.
Podcast.
It's just like one of
Sounds like you're getting into a pod and going to space. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, it's the whole sort of but yeah, his video show podcast is very good. The amount of clips I've seen of good. I think Daniel Priestley was on recently, which goes us all the way back to the first book.
That's like hours of that. I
Yeah.
watched hours of that, like 3 hours. It was excellent. Don't get me wrong. It was absolutely excellent.
Yeah.
Both of them together, you can imagine, can't you? And actually, he did another one with 2 or 3 other guys discussing changes in the US, etc., before
Yeah.
the recent things. So I think the books are a good foundation to understand, to get a handle on what he's talking about, because sometimes you go on to things and you just like, I have no idea what this man's on about,
Yeah.
or woman, person, and you think, I really need to understand more about this. The book is a great first call. I'm a book girl,
Yeah.
and I like the books. I mean, I do listen to stuff, particularly articles on immersive reader when things come through, because I can't do it all. But a nice book,
Yeah.
it's just something about it. Do you think it's because as a child we held on to a book and we enjoyed it,
Yeah. No, I'm very much an audiobook person at the moment, but yeah. Well, there are this kind of reference-y, like going back book works so much better as a physical book. I think
It does.
there are some books. I mean, I could listen to this as an audiobook and then it will go in one ear and probably come out the next. But if you can
Yep.
keep going back, it's probably better to have the physical copy. I would guess hardback probably as well. So
It's beautiful, yeah. It's beautiful. I mean, I nearly didn't buy it because I was at the airport and
Yeah.
I had books already in the bag, which were stowed in the plane by that time. But hopefully,
yeah,
but but I looked at it and I just went, nah, you got to have this, kid.
Yeah.
You got to have this. You realise it's like, shall I go back and buy that? No, let's not leave the shop. Let's just buy it now.
Yeah.
There'll be another bookshop. My husband's going, come on, get a move on.
Yeah.
And I go, no, as you do. And then I thought, no. So I really, I always buy a book at the always, even though I don't need it. I
Oh,
always
okay.
buy one.
Yeah, right. Shall we go on to the next book?
Yes, and this is our last book, I do believe, today.
The Secret Lives and Numbers by Kate Kitagaga and Timothy Revel. So, why this book?
Yeah. The Secret Lives of Numbers. Now, this is really fascinating. This is what I would call a knowledge book in my mind. So it's filled with information and background that I didn't know about, really. So it's a global history of mathematics and its unsung trailblazers, as it says. So I thought it might actually be for children when I saw it initially. But then, and I'm not really a maths girl, although I work in IT. I'm more of a, English and comms and history and art. But actually, as an adult, I found the history in this absolutely fascinating, and the explanations as to how we've evolved. I mean, it starts, Arabic scholars in the 9th century in their House of Wisdom, and it talks about women in computing, and obviously, we've got the Ada Lovelace and the ladies in America, and mapping to stars. It's all done by mathematics. When she talks about the origin, they talk about the origin of zero and infinity and their symbols. Well, we didn't have a zero for quite a long time. It didn't mean anything. And so the interesting things around whether that was in the Middle East and the Far East, we seem to have a lot more. The civilizations there had a zero, but only India really developed that zero, developed that concept to what we have now. But it was probably more around philosophy than it was just maths.
Yeah.
So it's completely different tales. So you've got the travel and the knowledge exchange across the Middle East and the Far East, sharing theories and techniques and understanding that history and maths were evolving very closely together at the time throughout hundreds of years, and that the different guises of those ideas, what we thought, and how different people, I mean, there's just everything in here. They're talking about, in the 1870s, civil rights, and there's just it's absolutely chock-a-block with history, history and how it fits together and how we've got where we've got. And I think, I mean, I must have done something like this at school, but I mean, it's an awfully long time ago. I might have been out that day, But I just find I looked at it and I thought, and I had read a review of it because the FT and the Sunday Times are obviously reviewing it, but I mean, it's the mathematics is explained in a lovely way. Calculus is described, using the author's home baking, for example, and they pose the question, how much cake is in our cake, and I just like the idea of it's accessible, it's inclusive, it's a bit radical, it's entertaining, but it's also, as I said, it talks about the pioneering African American mathematicians in the 20th century. It talks about all those Arabic scholars. It talks about how we've, revolutionized our knowledge of the night sky, and maths and numbers are a key part of that.
Yeah.
So for me, it's a bit of an education, trip.
Yeah.
So you've got an eclectic mix. You've had business books, you've had knowledge books, and you've had 2 novels.
Okay.
And what do you like the most from those?
Oh.
Ooh.
I'm supposed to ask the questions at the end, but I will ask. I will ask. There was one book I was thinking, High Frequency Change, I think is the one that I would get.
Tom Cheese, yes.
Yeah.
Tom Cheese, right.
An audio book version of that, so I can just have it as my credit.
We should look at Amazon and see, shouldn't we?
Yeah.
I'm sure there will be.
Yeah.
I'm sure there. He actually did a children's book.
Yeah.
Before Christmas, one of the Usborne pop-up type ones for children to understand. Jetpacks to fly and putting little robots into you to find out what's wrong with you, medical stuff, and it was designed for like 5 to 10-year-olds. Yeah. And so I gave it out to a couple of my friends' little ones for Christmas as part of their present package, and they all loved it. So he's got a huge, Tom Cheese, right? Yeah. The futurist, and I also think that, high frequency change, we're all experiencing it.
Anyway, I have 2 questions I ask guests at the end. This will turn out whether you've watched the previous shows or not. But the first question is, and I started off years ago asking, like, which book would you pick for somebody? But a more complicated version of that now, which is, if you were faced with somebody and you had to give them one of these books, what sort of questions would you ask them? What flowchart would you use to get to the appropriate book for that person in your mind?
From the books I've just shown you today. So I would be asking you, like I just did about the high frequency chat, I'd be looking at, what do you want the book for?
Yeah.
Do you want it to relax with? Do you want to be inspired to go out and do something? Are you at a point in your business journey or your life journey where you want to make a break and change your career, or you're unsure about things and you're looking for help? So the networking thing and the listening to other people's views, and I mean, we met through a networking event. So there would be the question about, if you're looking for a relaxing novel to just immerse yourself and play, depending upon what you I mean, both of those books are inspiring and have got lots of twists and turns, so they've got mystery in them. If it's something that you're starting out and you need some help, I'd either go with Key Person of Influence or The Diary of a CEO. They're both really packed with very important information. I suppose the Diary of a CEO is much more fundamental, whereas Key Person of Influence, although it's got some great fundamentals in it, is more a program in a way. It's got other things going for it. Keenly sought after program, I would say.
Yeah.
Keenly.
Yeah. And the other question I asked, which may or may not be appropriate because I haven't done my research properly, but what if you haven't written any books yourself yet? Is that right?
Not yet. We are. We're about to start on one.
Well, that's the question. It's like the question I usually ask is like, have you got a book coming up? And also, have you got a book that you feel you will write at some stage, but you're not ready to write it yet?
Well, funnily enough, the book that's uppermost at the moment is, because we've been podcasting, Julia and I, we've collaborated, and we collaborated from point zero. We met each other in November 2023. And funnily enough, going to support some of the people that you would have met the other day at that event. And so they were they'd written a book, Fab Collab. I don't know if you remember that. But anyway, they'd written a book, and so there was a conference, and we were sitting, and Julia sat next to me on my table.
Oh, okay.
That's how we got to know each other. And within a few meetings, we were talking about maybe doing something together.
Yeah.
And that's how Secrets of Learning and Development arrived. So we're going to write a book on collaboration, because there's very many layers to collaboration. You know, I've worked with people that have said, here's my framework for how I like to collaborate. And you've gone, you've got a framework? Okay, that sounds fascinating.
Yeah.
Not quite, but nearly. So, and the other one, I've always thought my grandmother had a tremendous story, because she was one of the first women they took into banks in the First World War, because there were no men.
Yeah.
So she became a cashier front office for Coutts Bank on the Strand. Well, up until then, women didn't really work, as you know. I mean, even, the groceries were delivered. Things were delivered. The butcher came to call. The vicar came for Sunday lunch. Completely different way of living and working, or not working, as far as women were concerned. So she could play the piano and speak French.
Yeah.
So her life is one with lots of twists and turns, like all of us, eh?
Yeah.
But because at that time, and I'm a child brought up on Nanny's stories.
You want to write a book about it?
I've always thought there's an element of that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I have worked with people in the past and thought about it, and I've done drafts, and I've never really got it any further. But I think the collaboration, the business one that we're going to do, has got far more legs on it. So watch this space, as they say, Tim.
Yeah. Well, you can come back when you've written the book. We can add it on the list.
Give me the rest of the year then. But it'll be on Amazon. Actually, we're thinking about doing, that you can publish, can't you? Is it KDP?
Yeah. Kindle Direct Publishing, yes. I mean, that's all the books I've done has been KDP. So,
really?
Yeah. It's, but that's a whole nother topic.
That's a whole nother live session, isn't it?
Yeah.
But I don't know is the answer, but I think it's definitely something that we're I mean, because we've been doing so well, and people have been so, saying how funny we are and how authentic we are, and how, all the things that you think you are, but you didn't really know if you are, and then everybody keeps saying it. You think, oh, okay. So now we've got nominated for an award and for our podcast, and now it's like we need to be talking about a book, Valerie. Key person of interest. We need a book. Oh, we need a book.
I'm not sure you do need a book, but if you want to write a book, write a book. That's
I've always thought I would have a book, and I don't know why, but I've always thought. I guess all the sorts of people that you have on the show. Probably everybody's got a book, haven't they?
Well, it's not especially difficult. To write. Well, if you think about it, like if you take a transcript of an audio podcast for an hour, that can be like 10,000 odd words. And
right.
It's not difficult to produce a book. It's difficult to produce a good book. That's the problem.
And we would want that.
Yeah.
We would want that, because everything we've got is, professional and worthwhile. And I hope I've given some insights into some of the books that I've enjoyed, when we talked about this. I didn't know. Well, I'd seen a couple of other of your book chat lives, but I didn't know very much. But so I'm hoping that people just will read, because it's it's so many different worlds, isn't it? Isn't there a quote about that?
Probably, but I don't
Yeah,
know
there
what
is a
that
quote.
quote.
There's a quote about read one book or read 100 books, and
Yeah,
it gives you the experience of other people's lives, and I think that's so
yeah,
useful. It's so
yeah.
fundamental now.
Right, to finish up, which I almost forgot about, is tell us about your podcast and what you do and how people can get in touch with you and all of that wonderful stuff.
Okay, so I'm Valerie Merrill, and I have a learning and development or training business with my husband Stuart. We are Merrill
Yeah.
Consultants Limited. So merrillconsultants.com is our website. Our podcast, The Secrets of Learning and Development, is on all major podcasts. Apple seems to be the one that's doing the most, but there are many others, as we know. And LinkedIn, I have a LinkedIn profile. So if you're in business there, you can find me on Valerie Merrill at LinkedIn.
Yeah. Okay, well, thanks so much for being the guest today, Valerie.
Thank you.
Thanks for everybody who was watching on Amazon, and thanks to anybody who watches in the future.